Eldrazi, he's 11-2. Let's go ahead and battle.
Yeah, I'm excited to see these players play. Both of these players have had a great run, so you can be assured that you're going to be seeing some tight play. And Jessup on that team, Metagame Gurus, they've had a dominant performance across the Open Series. They're one of the new hot teams. And you can even see behind Dan Jessup's left shoulder, there's one of his teammates playing in the feature match area too.
Yep, Team Metagame Gurus. Dan's going to start off here with a Fortified Village. Michael Segal has a Wandering Fumarole, and he's going to pass the turn back. Here we have a Hangerback Walker for 1 from Dan Jessup, and the action's going to go back to Michael Segal. Let's see what he can get going.
So this Hangerback Walker isn't a lot of pressure, but it's a nice way to just get something going, and it can certainly have some big implications later on down the line.
Dan has a third land for the turn. He's deciding what he wants to do. Some of those options could be a 2-drop, level his Hangerback. Looks like he's just going to pass the turns. Michael Segal is going to anticipate on Dan's end step. He's going to level that Hangerback Walker in response.
Another interesting interaction that should be noted is that Dromoka's command interacts pretty favorably with not only Kozilek's return, but also Spatial Contortion. If Dan Jessup has a 2-3 Sylvan Advocate and Mike Segal goes to Spatial Contortion it, a Dromoka's command would actually save it. So Dromoka's command is a card that, despite it being used as a removal spell, may not be the most effective. It's going to be able to interact with some of Michael's removal.
All right, so Michael's going to resolve his Anticipate here on Dan Jessup's end step, deciding how he wants to stack the cards. Looks like he's going to take another copy of Anticipate, put some lands on the bottom.
And if I were Mike Segal, I would assume that there's a good chance that Dan Jessup has a Dromoka's command. Not for sure, but just the way that Dan has sequenced things and used his mana, it would certainly be something that I would want to have on my radar.
All right, Michael just has another Highland Lake. He's going to pass the turn back to Dan Jessup. He does have a 4th land. Looks like we might see a face-down Den Protector here.
What Dan really wants to see here is some sort of Planeswalker. A Gideon or a Nissa are really the type of thing that he wants to be doing. Or an Oath of Nissa to find one.
Here it looks like we're just going to have a face-down Den Protector and a pass of the turn. Dan's likely going to level that Hangerback Walker one more time on Michael's end step. Looks like he just has a couple copies of Archangel Avacyn in his hand.
Oh, no big deal.
Which are going to be very good starting turn 5.
Yeah.
These also give him some protection against cards like Kozilek's Return.
Yeah. And in the very early part of the game, Dan is usually going to have free reign to do whatever he wants. And now that we're getting to turn 5, we're probably going to start seeing Michael have some big plays on his side of the table, and it'll be interesting to see how Dan's able to hold up against them.
Well, he's just going to pass the turn. Dan Jessup's going to start attacking now, getting in for 5 with his 3/3 Hangerback Walker and that Morph. Dan's going to pass the turn back. Let's see what Michael decides to do. We have an Anticipate.
And the timing on this Avacyn could be a little interesting. Dan has a few options with when to cast it. He could cast it during his opponent's upkeep. He could also cast it right now just to dodge a 3-mana counterspell. He'll likely just wait until the end of Michael's turn, but it is certainly something that he's giving thought to.
Looks like Dan picked up a copy of Evolutionary Leap as well, which could turn out to be pretty nice. A way to flip that Avacyn to get some extra damage in, convert that Hangerback Walker into some tokens if he needs to. And just a way to insulate his board against mass removal by drawing more cards.
Yeah. He also needs to be a little careful, though, because he doesn't want to end up wiping his own side of the board.
Well, we've got an Archangel Avacyn here on Michael's end step. He's going to use a Kozilek's Return in response. He's going to kill the Morph. And then he's going to Clash of Wills for 1 on the Archangel Avacyn.
So Michael's doing a good job. He had done nothing for a little while, but this turn having 2 spells in 1 turn is helping him catch back up.
Looks like he also has a Drowner of Hope in his hand, so next turn he'll be able to deploy something on the board, and that'll give him a few more turns.
I think if I were Dan, it looks like he has a Sylvan Advocate, the Evolutionary Leap, and an Avacyn in his hand. I would really like to see the Sylvan Advocate and the Evolutionary Leap hit play here. The Avacyn Indestructibility trigger is something that is quite good and has some real applications in this matchup. And you would want to potentially use your Evolutionary Leap before you played your Avacyn.
Not only that, but there's a Kozilek's Return in Michael's graveyard, and it might be in Dan's best interest to save that Avacyn for when an Ulamog or something comes to try and recast that.
It's like you beat me to the punch.
Well, 6 mana. Here's going to come a Drowner of Hope.
An Evolutionary Leap and Hangerback Walker are just a match made in heaven. Hangerback Walker, sometimes when it's still a whole thing, it's just that individual creature with a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it. Sometimes it's actually not that great. Your opponent can kind of ignore it. But in this sort of situation, Dan could add a counter to it, sacrifice it, get a card, get 4 tokens, and be in a pretty great situation. And if he has another land drop, he can do all of that while still having mana for Archangel Avacyn, which is quite nice.
And Drowner of Hope is so good at just locking this board down.
Yeah. A 5/5 is really big. One of the reasons that this green-white tokens deck plays so few creatures, but one of them is Sylvan Advocate, is because usually you hit your 6 land drop and Sylvan Advocate can reign supreme. This is one of the few decks where that's not true.
Here comes a Fortified Village tapped for Dan Jessup. Let's see what he decides to do with this turn. If he does happen to use 2 mana to add a counter to that Hangerback Walker and cash it in for another creature here, an Ulamog coming next turn could be very, very bad for Dan Jessup.
Yeah, there's really no incentive for him to make that play right now. He can just wait until the end of Michael's turn. So I think that is what he's likely to do. And this is the part of the game where Michael is going to be able to start leveraging some of his big plays. Like I'd said before, early on, Michael's a little vulnerable, but this is where things start to get good.
All right, well, Drowner of Hope is going to crash into the battlefield. It's like he has another Drowner of Hope in his hand. And now that he has 7 mana, those 2 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods are turned on, so he's jumped from 7 to 9 to 11 mana now with those 2 Eldrazi Scion tokens.
And this is a pretty interesting attack. I wonder if he was trying to bait out an Archangel Avacyn there.
Well, it looks like he might have a Spatial Contortion in hand, so he's definitely safe if there is a double block there.
Yeah.
He does have another Drowner of Hope, though, that's going to bring 2 more Eldrazi Scions. Oh, Dan's going to use the Avacyn now. He might be thinking that if Michael had an Ulamog, he would have gone for it, but a Spell Shrivel is going to counter that Avacyn.
Brutal.
Hangerback Walker is going to go up to 4 counters here.
And you can see that without the Planeswalkers, Dan Jessup is starting to get outclassed in a creature battle. He really needs something like a Gideon or a Nissa to just vomit a bunch of stuff onto the table and continually generate value.
Well, it looks like he just found a Nissa, so we might see something here where he levels Hangerback Walker, sacks it, plays Nissa, minuses, just to get a large army. And if that's the case, this Ulamog with the Kozilek's Return combo is just going to be devastating.
Yeah, this is looking pretty bad for
If Michael has
Dan.
it. We don't know if Michael has an Ulamog yet.
Yeah.
You always have to be worried, though.
An early Nissa from Dan's side could threaten to go ultimate. Like if you played it on turn 3, that's certainly something that I've done a lot more times than I thought I would. But when you play a Nissa later on, it's more likely that you're going to have to tick it down because the board presence is a little more important.
Right, well,
that said,
is going to resolve.
Yeah, that said, he can make a lot of chump blockers. with this Hangerback Walker and the Nissa, so it might be an all right play. When Kozilek's Return flashes back, it deals 5 damage to everything.
It does.
So one thing that would be a little annoying for Michael is he would lose both of his Drowner of Hopes in that scenario. I think it might still be advantageous for him to do, but
well, Dan is going to play his Nissa. He's going to minus it to put a counter on each of his creatures. Michael Segal is going to use 2 Eldrazi Scions to tap those 2 creatures down and then pass the turn back. We might actually see an Evolutionary Leap cash in that Hangerback Walker.
Oh, I certainly think that is the play that Dan Jessup is lining up in his mind. That's the only way he would be able to protect his Nissa from these Drowner of Hopes. It's also the only way he'd be able to get some pressure back on Michael. If we don't see a sweeper here for some reason, Dan Jessup could make a bunch of tokens and have a near lethal attack if he draws something like a Gideon Emblem or another Nissa off the top. This is a lot of damage, though.
Well, here comes a Wandering Fumarole activation. Let's see where he's sending them.
And he could just ignore the Nissa and send everything at Dan. It would be a lethal attack. This is potentially 16 damage coming in, and Dan Jessup is only at 15. And we see this time and time again with the blue-red Eldrazi deck. It does nothing for a little while, and it does a little something, and then all of a sudden it turns the corner so fast.
Yeah, Drowner of Hope puts a lot of pressure onto
it really does.
its opponents, and it plays great defense.
Yep.
It's kind of like a blue Linvala.
It is. You're absolutely right. Good call. Dan Jessup taking a sip of water as things are heating up in the feature match area.
I think Michael's deciding what he's attacking and where he's sending everything.
And it looks like he's keeping one of his Scions back.
And I think he's sending everything at Dan Jessup. So Hangerback Walker is going to be sacrificed.
I do like that
Thopters.
quite a bit. If you wanted to kill the Nissa, you'd likely have to commit quite a few resources to it. And that this is not going to really do much in the next 2 turns. Well, in the next turn, it's definitely not going to do much. The turn after that, it might.
Hangerback Walker and Evolutionary Leap. Match made in heaven.
Really
That's
is.
why they're in the same set.
Yep, like PB&J.
Right, we've got a Thopter's going to jump in front of an Eldrazi Scion.
Just like Chris Van Meter and Andy Boswell.
Yep.
So the good news for Dan is if he can slog through what he sees, there's not a whole lot left in the tank. But Ulamog, even though it is 1 card, it's a big one.
Huh, it's interesting. I wonder why he blocked the Eldrazi Scion and not the Wandering Fumarole. I guess we don't know exactly where all of the creatures were attacking.
The Eldrazi Scion is just a 1/1, so I think he was just going for the trade, right?
Yeah, I guess he just wanted to trade off with the Eldrazi Scion.
Yeah, just get rid of it while he can. Even at a low life total, you still got to consider that card advantage.
Looked like he might have taken 9 on that attack. If so, he would have fallen to 6.
Yeah, I think our life totals are reversed, but this is that Nissa off the top was a pretty good draw. Dan might be able to push some damage here. I believe that Dan is at 6 and Michael is at 15, but if Michael is at 16 or 6, Dan would have a very good attack here. I think what Dan's doing here is he's setting up a situation where he can minus his Nissa on the next turn, play another Nissa, minus again, and put Michael in a real bad spot. We know he has another Sylvan Advocate to play, and he's going to have a few Evolutionary Leap activations as well. The one thing that Dan would actually really like to draw off the top is probably some more green mana.
Yeah. Well, there's another Sylvan Advocate.
And 2 green mana open means that he can chump block both these Drowner of Hopes, get 2 Evolutionary Leap activations.
Oh.
What do you draw?
Chandra Flamecaller is the
Jeez.
draw from Michael Segal this turn.
That's pretty good.
Let's see how he decides to do this. That Sylvan Advocate is a 4/5, though.
Yeah, a -4 would be quite good, but
Oh, he also has a Spatial Contortion that he can use to kill the Advocate.
so we may just be looking at game.
Yeah, this might just be lethal.
He may just -4 here, wipe everything except for the 2 Sylvan Advocates, Spatial Contortion the untapped Sylvan Advocate.
He doesn't even have to -4, he's just going to -2.
That's right. These Drowner of Hopes are no pun intending, but they are drowning Dan's hope in this game.
All right, well, Dan's going to sacrifice a plant to Evolutionary Leap. It's going to find him. Oh,
he would love to
all
have
those Dromokas commands.
some of those
on top.
Dromokas commands in his hand.
Well, that's going to find him a Hangerback Walker.
I had a situation at the last GP where I cast Oath of Nissa when I really needed to draw a removal spell for my opponent's creature. And off my Oath of Nissa, I saw 3 Dromokas commands.
Ouch. Oh, another one of the Thopter tokens is going to get Evolutionary Leaped. That's going to find.
And this is great for Michael. He just gets to see what's in Dan's deck.
Yeah.
Declaration of Stone, that's not a card that every green-white tokens player has in his main. It's good for Michael to know.
Oh, there's a Sylvan Advocate.
So maybe he doesn't have the Spatial Contortion.
I think he might be getting tricky and he's going to use it to, well, he can't use it to pump a Drowner.
No, because it'd kill it. They got 2 damage on him.
They do.
Oh,
no!
He's going to lose both
No!
of his.
It has 2 damage on it.
I believe both those Drowner of Hopes have 2 damage, and I believe both those Drowner of Hopes should be dead, unless we're missing something.
Oh, he only Chandred for 1?
Oh, of course, yeah, because the Chandras have 3.
Okay. Oh, the 3. I
Oh,
thought
man.
it looked like he put his 2 fingers up.
I was about to throw my headset on the ground and run over and be like, no, Dan, don't concede.
He could have just done it for 2 and then Spatial Contortion.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Michael Segal's going to take that game. His gesture with 2 fingers looked like it was 2, but he only did 1 point of damage. If we would have known how many counters that Chandra started with.
If only we knew how to do our jobs.
Yeah, if only. So Michael Segal's going to take the first game here on Blue-Red Eldrazi over Dan Jessup, who's on Green-White tokens. Let's take a look at their sideboards and see how we think they're going to change their deck up for this.
So I think that Dan Jessup is going to be bringing in the probably the Angelic Purge just to deal with the really, really big creatures, the Den Protector simply to have access to some extra removal spells, probably the Secure the Wastes to have a good flash threat. And then you could also consider the Declaration of Stone because Dromokas commanding those big creatures are quite difficult.
Michael Segal has 3 Negate, 2 Fiery Impulse, 3 Fevered Visions, a Deceiver of Forms, 2 Coastal Elect Return, 2 Thought-Knot Seer, and a Drowner of Hope. How do you think he's going to sideboard?
So I like the negates a lot. I think one of the best things out of Dan's deck is going to be his few exile effects like Declaration Stone and his Planeswalkers. I also think that'll bring in the extra 2 Coastal Elect returns, the other Drowner of Hope, and probably the Thought-Knot Seer also.
I could definitely see that. Now, while our players are finishing up sideboarding, I do want to take this brief second just to talk about StarCityGames.com Game Night. These events are really awesome. They're very open and friendly. You can go practice your deck for F&M, and you can also get these sweet, sweet tokens and pins. Currently, right now in the month of June, every week you can get an Otter Spell token. It's a Merfolk Wizard 1/1, or one of those sweet Otter Spell pins that Andrew and I are sporting on our suits. And in July, you can get Snipcaster Mage, which is pretty cool. It's a 2/1 Crab Wizard,
The flashiest crab in the
the
multiverse.
flashiest crab. And then in August, we have Young Burrowmancer. So again, I'm going to say this every time I see it. I feel a little slighted that there is yet another 1/1 red elemental.
You just can't let it go.
But this one is still pretty cool. I made a tweet when I first saw this that this probably could have been Young Burrito-mancer. And just the same picture, but just like a burrito being roasted in the fire in the burro's hand.
He's like throwing chili peppers.
But Young Burrowmancer is funny enough, and in August you can get those. Go.starcitygames.com/game night. Let your local game store know that you're interested in playing in those so they can get them set up for you. So as we come back to our players here, it looks like Michael has to use the restroom. Let's talk a little more about Dan Jessup. Let's see if we can learn a little more. He is part of TeamMetaGameGurus.com. He is 24 years old. He's from Ronkonkoma, New York. That looks like Roanoke a lot, but it's not.
Yeah.
He has 6 open top 8s with an open win. He has 1 invitational top 8. He's played 4 years of varsity lacrosse. He's a New York sports fanatic, New York Yankees, New York Giants, and the New York Rangers especially. And he's a stock manager by day.
Wow, pretty sweet. I didn't know that he was a stock manager.
No, he has a normal job. I actually see him tweeting a lot about how he's like, worked 3 overnights, let's go catch a flight to Atlanta and play in the Magic tournament.
Yep.
But he is part of Team Metagame Gurus, and his brother was in the finals of the Open
2 fearsome brothers.
Indianapolis with fellow teammate Pete Ingram, Danny Jessup, and Andrew Jessup.
And we saw Andrew playing earlier today, too.
He did.
I believe he was the one who was behind Danny in the feature match area.
Yep, and they're both playing green-white tokens.
The best deck.
I mean, arguably.
Jerry's
like undefeated.
Yeah.
Remember I said before, Jerry usually plays the best deck for any given tournament.
Yeah, well, I can certainly agree with it this time.
I'm interested to see how his matchup is doing with Cedric Phillips.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. I know that Cedric thought he had a favorable matchup. I know that I think Jerry has a favorable matchup, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see who ends up taking that.
So for this particular matchup, what we saw in Game 1 was that the green-white tokens deck just had a pretty anemic draw. He had some action, he had some creatures. He ended up finding a Nissa and had an evolutionary leap, but not having an early planeswalker, not having a Gideon, not having any way to buff up his team, just gave Michael time to get to those Drowner of Hopes and just take over the game.
Yeah, he had the turn 2 Hangerback Walker. He leveled up on turn 3, not particularly climactic. On turn 4, he played a Sylvan Advocate, I believe, and then on turn 5 he played an Avacyn that was just easily answered. So overall, not one of his good draws. He really wants to be curving out a little bit more, have a 2-drop, a 3-drop, a 4-drop, preferably have some Planeswalkers mixed in there so that it's harder for his opponent to interact with all of his stuff at once. And hopefully that's what we get to see in these next 2 games.
Well, Dan is going to be on the play here, so that definitely gives him an edge. He can get out ahead of Michael with those Planeswalkers and try and put some pressure. Michael does have some great ways to catch up with, his spot removal, spatial contortion, and whatnot. And Kozilek's Return is a pretty big game if it lines up well against Dan's draws. So let's see what these players are going to do with their opening hands.
Yeah, in Game 1 we basically saw what Michael is trying to do in the matchup and what he's usually going to be doing in some shape or form. So
Danny does not look too happy with his hand. Let's see if he keeps.
No, you see the eyebrows raised, and he's like, ugh.
Nope, he's going to go ahead and send him back. He's going to take a trip to Paris. He doesn't speak French, but he goes there often. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Looks like Michael is going to be content with his hand.
So one thing that's a little tricky
or
about
not.
this, a gentleman's mulligan. He was like, I was going to keep my hand to see you mulligan. Oh, I'll even it out.
How does this green-white token stack mulligan?
So in my experience, I've kept a lot of what other people would consider sketchy hands. I've kept hands where I've got 2 planes, 2 Hangerback Walkers, and a bunch of green cards. And I'll just be like, yeah, keep. Or I'll keep Canopy Vista, Oath of Nissa, and no other lands. And I'll just keep, because the likelihood that you're going to mulligan and have a good hand is just fairly low. You've got high demands on your colors. You've got a double green and a double white planeswalker that you want to play early. You don't have access to a whole lot of dual lands. You've got 3 or 2 Westvale Abbeys in your deck, which aren't really helping matters either. And so a lot of the times I've kept some hands that what other people would consider sketchy, I'll keep them. And a lot of times you end up drawing just fine. Like 1 land and Oath of Nissa, you end up finding your second and your third land over a couple draw steps, and you usually end up getting to play Magic in those hands where you're going Plains Place, Hanger, Backwalker. You give yourself some time to find a forest, an Oath of Nissa, and then you're off to the races. So I end up keeping a lot of hands that I think look bad, but are fine.
So what you're saying is this deck does not mulligan well.
Yeah, I don't like mulliganing with it. If you want, I could say that all again with like more words, if you would prefer.
All right, well, both players are going to start out with some enter the battlefield tapped lands. They have kept their 6. This would be a perfect time for something like Nissa out of Dan.
Yeah.
Looks like he does have a Nissa. Does he have another land? We've got a Westvale Abbey. There's a Nissa.
And this can take up to 7 and draw a bunch of cards. I never thought that I would ultimate this card when I first started playing with it, but when you're against these slower decks, if you play it on turn 3, that is exactly what I expect to do with it. Just tick it up, tick it up, tick it up, tick it up, and it's just like Bristlebrand. Draw 7 cards, gain 7 life. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but something along those lines.
All right, well, Michael's just going to anticipate on Dan's end step. He's going to find what looked to be a copy of Chandra the Flamecaller. He's going to play a land and pass the turn back. Let's see what kind of action Dan has here. Looks like it's just a Hanger Backwalker. Maybe we'll see a minus on Nissa.
And now that this Nissa is in play, Michael really doesn't have good ways to interact with it. He's going to be looking to play a Chandra and attack it, or play a Drowner of Hope, but he's going to need to clear away all these plant tokens first.
Well, a Spell Shrivel is going to take care of the Hanger Backwalker. Dan did miss his 4th land. He picked up a copy of Fortified Village here, though, so he's going to be able to put a land on the battlefield tapped. This would be a good time to try and slam that Gideon, but he is going to have to wait a turn. Nissa is just going to keep going up.
A little unfortunate, but that Nissa is really threatening. It's a little less threatening considering Dan is missing land drops, because not only will he not draw as many cards, but he won't be able to deploy them as quickly, but it's still going to be a great boon.
Well, here we just have an island from Michael.
I feel like we've never seen Michael miss land drops.
I mean, the deck plays a lot of lands.
Yeah, I think it's playing probably something like 26 lands, and on top of that, he's got the Hedron Archive, so he might be all the way up to 30 mana sources, and with the anticipates to smooth things out.
Looks like he actually has 28 lands in his deck.
Wow, 28 lands and 4 Hedron Archives. So yeah, he's never going to miss a land drop. I ran the numbers, never going to happen.
That's perfect, right?
Yep.
Well, to be fair, 2 of them are spawning beds. 4 of them are the Wandering Fumarals. And he has 4 majoring networks. 28's a lot of land.
Yeah, it really is.
But I can get down with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to cast your Ulamog, that's what you got to do.
All right. We've got a Jace, Unraveler of Secrets here for Michael. He's going to start giving him some card advantage since Dan doesn't really have a good way to try and threaten it this turn. However, he could just Gideon Emblem minus the Nissa and kill that Jace.
Yeah, and that looks like what he is going to do. I think that I would have liked to seen him go a little more aggressively for the ultimate on Nissa. These plants are likely to get swept away.
Yeah, here we have a Chandra the Flamecaller. Maybe we're going to see a -3 to kill all the plants.
Yeah, and that'll still allow the Chandra to stick around and pressure that Nissa. I don't think that Jace was actually that threatening. But
yeah.
It looks like Dan put a pretty high priority on killing it right away.
And so Nissa's going to go up. It's going to make a plant. Dan's going to play a Sylvan Advocate and a Hanger Backwalker for 1.
And this is one of the hardest things with the green-white tokens deck is when you're missing land drops. So many of your cards scale up with more lands. Not only are there cards like Secure the Waste or the Nissa's Ultimate where you want a lot of lands, but there's also cards like Sylvan Advocate, Hanger Backwalker. All of these things, you just want a lot of lands.
All right, Michael's going to plus his Nissa. And we've got some elementals.
So this is a tricky decision for Dan, because if he blocks with his plant and Sylvan Advocate, he'll be able to keep his Hangerback Walker and keep him marginally more secure to a sweeper, but not by much.
Now this Gideon emblem has the potential to do some good for Dan, though. I really like how it's going to be buffing his creatures, and along with the Nissa minus, he can kind of insulate them from the front end of Kozilek's return if we get to that point.
Yeah, the emblem really does a lot. It can't be understated how much work it does to just ensure that all of your cards are better as we get more and more into the game.
All right, well, it looks like we've got a plant token and a Sylvan Advocate are going to jump in front of those elementals. Ooh, here we have a Kozilek's return is going to clean up the rest of the battlefield.
This Thopter could kill this Chandra. If the Thopter kills the Chandra, that would be a huge deal. He's not going to be able to block it with Scion tokens from that spawning bed.
Well, it looks like Michael has an Ulamog in his hand along with another land. So next turn, he's going to be able to play that Ulamog and rebuy that Kozilek's return, and that could end up being very bad for Dan Jessup.
Yeah. One of the reasons I like the idea of trying to ultimate the Nissa earlier is because now that we're getting a little later in the game, it's going to be a lot harder. Michael has much better options to attack that Nissa now that we're at this point in the game.
Dan does have 2 copies of Declaration in Stone in his hand, so while this Ulamog is going to clear the board and get rid of that Nissa and likely the Westvale Abbey, Dan will be able to take care of it with a Declaration in Stone. The second copy of Chandra that's in Michael's hand might just end up being too much for Dan to handle, though.
Yeah, Dan is in rough shape right now. The missed land drops made it so that while his draw was pretty decent, he couldn't really get onto the board in as big of a way as he wanted, as quickly as he wanted to. And now Michael's really big cards are likely going to take over. Things could still go well for Dan if he draws a couple of good cards off the top, but he's basically going to want to draw a couple cards that are like the top of his curve over the next 3 turns. So he doesn't have that much time.
Now, in the past, we've seen Michael wait on these Ulamogs, so there's a chance that he just plays Chandra this turn instead of the Ulamog, just to try and get a little more value out of that Kozilek's return. He does also have to be wary of something like an Archangel Avacyn saving his creatures.
Right, not only an Avacyn, but a Secure the Wastes would be great here. Ooh, and we just got
word that Jerry
hot
Thompson
off the press
has beat Cedric Phillips to go 14-0. Wow.
Yeah, Jerry's
good job,
just
Jerry.
killing it.
This Chandra is going to come down -2. It's going to clear up the board. Dan didn't have an Archangel Avacyn there, so Michael has to be, sure that the coast is going to be clear for this Kozilek's return.
And this is going to be backbreaking. Dan's going to commit another Planeswalker to the battlefield. He cannot pressure this Chandra. There's a Kozilek's return in the graveyard, and Michael is going to be able to mop up not only the Planeswalkers, but the few tokens that are on the battlefield.
And start pressuring Dan's life total with this Chandra.
Yeah. And this is why you would play this blue-red Eldrazi deck. You take advantage of other decks not having a blazing fast start, and you get a little bit of time, counter some of their Planeswalkers or things that are going to be hard to deal with once they've hit the battlefield, and then you get to start trumping them with these monster plays.
So he's counting out his mana here to see if he can play this Hedron Archive before he plays his Ulamog. So the 2 shrines will be able to play the Ulamog, or to be able to play the Archive. The rest is going to use an Ulamog.
Jeez, and this is absolutely brutal.
It's going to take care of the Nissa and the Canopy Vista with the Ulamog triggers. It's going to make 2 elementals, attack the Gideon.
And he just gets everything, even a land.
He gets it all. So Dan is going to be able to use Declaration in Stone to get rid of that Ulamog, but Michael can draw 2 cards with his Hedron Archive next turn. Still has this Chandra Flamecaller generating advantage.
Yeah, and he's even going to have a clue. So Michael is going to be able to gas up. Likely he's going to be able to kill Nissa on this turn. All he needs to do is draw like a Drowner of Hope, a random removal spell, another Ulamog. Michael is sitting pretty and still at 18 life.
Yep.
Danny never really got a chance to pressure Michael in any kind of meaningful way.
Thankfully, Dan drew another land there, so he's able to play
Both cards.
both cards. But a Spatial Contortion off the top from Michael is going to let him remove that plant. He's going to activate his Chandra +1 attack down that Nissa. It's like he's going to cash in his Hedron Archive to draw 2 cards here. Just picks up a couple lands. He might even cash in that clue.
Why not?
Well, if he doesn't cash in the clue, then he can use the Spawning Bed to add 3 more creatures. But let's see what we got on top of our deck. It's another
I think he's got better things to do than make 3 tokens.
It's another Spatial Contortion that's going to give us some protection. Oh, Dan just draws another land. He does have that Westvale Abbey that he can use to, chump trade with these elemental tokens.
And this green-white tokens deck is a momentum-based deck. As soon as you're able to get it so that it's out of gas and it's playing off the top of its library, some of its draws can be pretty weak by themselves. If you just randomly play a Nissa, a lot of times it's not actually that good by itself without support.
We see a Drowner of Hope off the top here from Michael Segal. He's going to plus his Chandra, get 2 elementals, going to attack Dan down to 14. Going to go to his end step. Those elementals will go away. Dan's going to go to 13. He's going to make a 1/1 black and white human token with that Westvale Abbey. But I don't really think there is much that can happen here for Dan to get back in this game.
Yeah, for the most part, I believe the writing is on the wall. Dan's going to need some miracle draw steps, and even then, it's going to be tough.
I don't quite think a Forest is going to do it.
Oh no.
I
do like forests though.
He does have a Declaration in Stone for that Drowner of Hope, but the second Chandra that Michael found early on in the game with his Anticipate just turned the tides in this game.
Yeah. Again, though, this Declaration of Stone on a Drowner of Hope's not much of a solution when Michael's just going to draw another card, has infinite mana to make perfect use of whatever he draws.
Yeah. Of all the decks that you don't want to be giving clues, this is one of them.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to level up his Majoring Network. He's not going to cash in that clue just yet. Or maybe, oh, no, he's just going to untap.
He's going to save it for a rainy day.
Yeah, why not?
Not quite yet. Got to wait for the perfect time.
He's going to draw another card. Cash in the clue now. It's just a Wandering Femoral, which is still a good draw on this board. Plus his Chandra. Heck, he could even minus the Chandra and just drew like 5 cards. Attack with the 2 elementals.
0 Chandra, right?
Or 0 the Chandra.
Yeah. I think it should be a minus ability also.
He's going to play his Wandering Femoral, pass the turn back to Dan Jessup, and just another land for Dan. He's a soldier. He's going to play it out. He's going to make Michael actually kill him. But this does not look like it's very good for Dan Jessup.
Yeah, he could run into a scenario where a top deck Secure the Waste could be meaningful. But
Spawning Bed.
I don't think that it's going to work out now with that Spawning Bed being cracked.
Yep, that's going to be cracked. That's going to make some more
I think this is going to be a lethal attack. Dan is just going to make Michael go through the motions. And there we go. We have it. Dan Jessup has fought quite well this whole weekend. Team Metagame Gurus has been killing it. But Dan Jessup is unfortunately going to lose this game to Mike Segal's Blue-Red Eldrazi deck. Just going a little too big. Ulamog packs that super powerful punch, especially when you're flashing back Kozilek's Return. And Mike Segal is in great shape to top 8.